My name is Nancy, and I'm currently a first year bachelor student at the Academy of Sinology. Today, I will be sharing about my experience growing up with traditional Chinese culture integrated in my family education. I will share how my parents taught me through their actions. Before I begin my main topic, I'd like to give a bit of background on how and when my family first began learning traditional Chinese culture. My father first heard of the Venerable Master Qin Kong during his time at university. He spent great amounts of time listening to cassette tapes of Venerable Master Qin Kong's Dharma talks, as well as reading classics and sutras. He then introduced traditional Chinese culture to my mother, and when my mother was pregnant with me, she read the Heart Sutra to me. And this is what we call prenatal education in traditional Chinese culture. And that's how I was introduced to Chinese culture. I was born in China, but raised in Canada, and attended various public and independent schools. Throughout the years, my parents have continued to listen to Venerable Master Qin Kong's Dharma talks and kept up with teaching me traditional Chinese culture. Today, when we talk about education, we often think of elementary school, middle school, high school, and after that, university. And for some people, after an undergraduate degree, they then pursue a master's degree or even a PhD. However, Chinese sages tell us that there's more to it than academic education. The Venerable Master Qin Kong said that before academic education comes family education. He said family education is the root of all education. It is the root of world harmony and the foundation of peace in society. The Venerable Master Qin Kong put such emphasis on family education because a child's growth in childhood is the most important in their life. What a child is taught in his or her childhood will determine the rest of their life. There's a saying in Chinese that goes, 三岁看八十, which roughly means when a child is at the age of 3, one is able to see what his future will hold. We learn many important things in our childhood, and our parents play the most important role of all, to lead by example and teach us how to be a good person. Today, I will first share my experience of family education in 3 sections: the importance of good environment, learning to read classics and do things, and learning how to interact with others through my parents' demonstration in their relationships. Then I will talk about how I have benefited from my family education. To begin, in a story, we know that we're always introduced with the setting. The setting determines a lot for a story. Same with the environment for a child's education. A good environment with good influences makes a significant difference for a child's growth. Here, I'd like to share a Chinese story. 2,000 years ago in China, there lived a young boy with his mother. They were very poor and first lived near a graveyard, where mourners often came to mourn and weep for loved ones who had passed on. After some time, the young boy began to imitate this behavior. The children played games copying the activities of the funerals and rituals. Upon discovering this, his mother knew that this was unacceptable and moved to find a better environment to raise her son. They found a place in the town. The streets in the town bustled with merchants and vendors and the activities of a nearby slaughterhouse. Here, the young boy, like other children in the new neighborhood, copied the behavior of the merchants and butchers, playing games of pretending to cut meat. Again, his mother found this to be unacceptable and moved once more. this time settling near a school. At their new home, the young boy, in an environment of people studying and reading, surrounded by saints and sages' teachings, began to imitate their polite behavior and became studious himself. Many may be familiar with the story. It's a true story, and the young boy later became a great sage, Mencius. From this story, we see the amount of influence an environment can have on a child. My own parents also took great care in choosing the right environment to raise my sister and myself. They chose a farm in the quiet countryside, away from the business of cities. On the farm, I had the opportunity to be surrounded by nature and often played outside in the fields, in the forest, or by the creek, which is also better for physical health. There was also the chance to help out with farm work, where I can get a taste of the difficulties of providing for the family and learn to work with others. But my parents also never put pressure on me. They never forced me to learn anything or do anything. They never told me to achieve a certain academic degree or said that I should pursue a certain career. My parents only ever told me to not be a burden to society or the people around me, and if I had the ability, to try to do good things for the world. Now, when I was young, my parents taught me how to read classics. I was around 3 years old when my father taught me, and he was always very patient. When we started, we began with a little bit at a time, maybe 10 or 20 minutes at first, and he never expected too much of me, especially when I was young. And we always read together. He always was there beside me. Some of the classics that I've read over the years include 弟子规, which is known as the guidelines for being a good person, 三字经, known as the three-character classic, and 太上感应篇, the treatise of the most exalted one on cause and effect, and other children's classics. Until I was older, I don't think we ever sat down for more than 30 to 40 minutes at a time to read or learn classics. And as I got a little older, my father also taught me how to write Chinese characters. He let me practice my writing by copying Chinese classics. Apart from learning and reading classics, my parents spent a lot of time with me and my sister, teaching us how to do chores and also playing together. We never had a TV at home, so my dad taught me how to play Chinese chess and a Chinese board game called 5 in a Row. Other times, we would read Chinese stories or make little crafts together, or we played sports and games outside. In the winter time, when it snowed, we would have snowball fights or build snowmen. In the summertime, when we were busy with farm work, we would all go together to work in the fields. Not all of my time was spent studying. In fact, I would say most of the time I wasn't. And I believe it's the time spent together as a family that makes up an important part of my growth. Another aspect that I noticed my parents did was teaching according to the child. It wasn't just all the same for my sister and me. For example, I'm often very slow at doing things. I'll procrastinate and do things very carefully, taking up a lot of time, doing things last minute. My parents will often say to me, "You don't need to be overly meticulous," or "You can go a little faster." But my sister is the opposite of me. She likes to get things done quickly, and sometimes her work is a little sloppy. So my parents will tell her to slow down and put a little more care into her work. Another thing about me is that I don't really like to exercise all that much. But my dad would always encourage me to go outside and exercise every day because he knew the importance of physical health. Again, My sister is rather the opposite of me. She likes to go outdoors and play sports, sometimes not wanting to do her homework. My dad would then encourage her to ensure her homework is done, but he never forced us. Every parent wants their child or children to be happy. I believe that my parents not only imparted the teachings of Chinese classics, they also gave me a healthy and happy childhood. The 5 relationships in Confucianism are between parent and child, husband and wife, leader and followers, elder and younger siblings, and friends. I've seen my parents demonstrate each of these relationships in their interactions. Actions speak louder than words. We've all heard of that. Through their actions, my parents have taught me more about how to interact with others than I ever could learn through reading or listening to any lectures. For the parent and child relationship, I see my parents put into practice family reverence toward my grandparents. For the husband and wife relationship, my parents have different roles in the family. For example, my mom is responsible for cooking, whereas my dad does more work on the farm. And I've really seen them argue, which brings harmony to the family. For the leader and follower or subordinate relationship, I've seen how my parents treat the hired farm workers in the summer with generosity and kindness. And through this, I have learned how leaders and subordinates can interact harmoniously, which would be useful in my future. With their siblings, my parents are very respectful to their elder sisters, and seeing their relationships has set an example for myself for interacting with my own younger sister. And by seeing my parents get along with their friends and helping out when they can, I have learned the way to interact with my friends. All of these, though some may seem like small things, are examples for me, and these good actions teach me how to interact with the people around me. Parents are the role models for their children. Now I'll be sharing some of the things that I have learned from my family education. 2 of the most important things that my parents taught me through their actions are 1, treating people with kindness and respect. As I mentioned earlier, my parents show their generosity and kindness to all those around them. For example, in the summer, my parents often send my sister and me to bring vegetables to all of our neighbors as a kind gesture, and it doesn't matter if they know them well or not. And because of this generosity, my parents get along well with all of our neighbors. This has taught me to be kind and respectful to everyone. The other thing is hardworking and being independent. Running a farm, my parents have worked hard, and their actions have taught me that hard work leads to fruits of labor. They are often the first to go to work in the fields in the mornings and the last to come home in the evenings, letting the hired workers rest first. When they can do something on their own, they wouldn't ask others to do it for them. My parents often patiently guided me through things I needed help with, but also gave me space to figure out on my own and let me grow. I'd like to share a story about this. A few years ago, my parents bought an IKEA wardrobe. They were busy with farm work, and I thought it would be a fun task to try to assemble it. So I asked if I could do it. I know at this point some parents would think, but that's dangerous for a child to do, or how could a child be able to assemble something like that properly? It might fall apart. It's true, I did need some help, but when my dad heard my request, he agreed to it, and excitedly I started working on it right away. It took me all morning and all afternoon, and halfway through I needed help. but by dinner time, the wardrobe was more or less put together, albeit a little wobbly and had many screws in need of tightening. But my dad came and patiently helped to tighten all the screws and finish up the work. You might be wondering at this point, couldn't he have just done it himself in less than half the time? Couldn't he have done a better job of it without resulting in a wobbly wardrobe? Of course he could have, but he gave me the chance to work on it on my own because during the process, I learned how to be independent and solve the problems that arose. In the end, I felt accomplished, and it gave me confidence that I could do something on my own. Another example is that my dad started teaching me how to drive the tractor by the age of 13. And he let me drive as soon as I was old enough. As a child, it was a lot of fun to drive the tractor, but my parents were also teaching me to do my part in contributing to the family. And when I was able to drive on my own, he let me make deliveries by myself. On my deliveries, the people I meet often express their surprise at the fact that my dad will let his 18-year-old daughter do such hard work. It might be difficult for some parents to understand, but I know my parents let me do it to help me learn. And I had never thought of it as tiring or hard, but as a duty, because my parents had always taught me this over the years. In fact, I enjoyed doing it. And I learned so many real-world things while driving and doing deliveries that I could not ever have possibly learned from reading books. Most importantly, I learned how to interact and communicate with people in all kinds of situations, including when someone is upset at me or when I've made a mistake and have had to apologize. These are all real-world situations and problems that I've come across and have had to learn to solve on my own. I'm glad that my parents gave me this opportunity, and I believe that letting me do things on my own, although it may not be the most convenient for them, has helped me grow. I am immensely grateful to have such amazing parents who have put so much effort into raising me and my sister, and for setting such a great example. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And thank you everyone for listening. Now, please welcome my fellow student, Xinghui, to share with you her reflections and thoughts on learning Sinology. Thank you very much.